right.
Okay. David has run a couple of Kickstarters, or one Kickstarter so far, and he's just about to start another one. So he's going to come and talk to us today about running Kickstarters and what's involved. Thank you, David.
Okay, thanks very much, everybody. So, I apologise, work for a big company, you get used to putting slides like that in. Feel free to read it later. Okay, so very briefly then, very little bit of background about myself. So, I've been working on computers for about 40 years now. My first proper computer that I built was an ASCOM2, which dates me slightly, which I built since for the late 70s or early 80s, I do believe. Been playing with Raspberry Pis since they basically came out. Quite good fun, got at least 10 of them now, plus. Tend to do things with displays in the real world, and decided this year to have a go at Kickstarter. I'd supported a number, decided it'd be nice to give it a go and actually try it for myself and see how it went. And the result of that was the Pimax clock, which you can see sitting down here. Apologise, it's got the wrong time on. Forgot to bring the real-time clock chip this morning. For my day job, though, I work in the oil and gas industry, and because of that, I spend a lot of time in my job worrying about reliability and technology, and particularly worrying about things going wrong. So one of the things I started to do when I first looked at Kickstarter was start to think about, well, that's really good if it all goes well, but what happens if it doesn't go right? What happens if it goes wrong? What could happen? Well, if you have a look around, what can happen? Well, the best bet is you could end up having to spend a lot more of your time on it than you thought you were going to. You could lose friends and family because they tend to be your major investors if it goes wrong. You could have to end up making up the financial shortfall, or if in worst case you could actually get sued by some unhappy supporters. And you'd be surprised, but there are examples, particularly in the US, where people have lost homes and the like because Kickstarters went wrong. Usually another reason for it as well, but it's worth appreciating there can be some bad sides to it. So I thought, okay, that's not great. What exactly should we be worrying about? What was it that kind of concerned me? Well, firstly, it sounds bizarre, but to know what you're worrying about, you've got to decide what success looks like. So think about what is a successful? What are you trying to get out of it? Are you trying to make some money, launch a new career, have a go, have an experiment, see what things are like? You know, you kind of need to know what you're trying to do, because that will help you understand very much what you need to do. You have to be over 18 as well if you're doing Kickstarter, so it's probably a wise decision. So be clear on what success means to you. Then think about what could go wrong within that. Well, the costs could be higher than expected. You could have just got the costs wrong. You could have an issue, one of the slightly hidden issues that you find particularly on Kickstarter is the way they fund postage, and I'll talk about that a little bit more. You might find that backers drop out at the last minute, so you can have a really good thing going, and then suddenly people start dropping out towards the end. So there's anything you can do to try and stop that happening. Maybe some incentivise, so you know, add additional rewards to keep people interested right up until the end. And then you've got to consider, you know, getting your rewards out to the backers. Now, for most of the sort of projects I'm guessing that people here will be considering, what that really would mean is completing the actual Kickstarter. So the likelihood is the project the rewards are the Kickstarter you're doing, and that creates a specific risk, because that means if your project isn't successful, you can't fulfil your rewards. And if you can't fulfil your rewards, there is some legal obligation on you to actually refund your backers, which is kind of fine if it's only your own money, but if you spent some money you've had to borrow or something like that, you know, can you afford to actually repay that if it goes wrong? Less of a problem if you're going to give all your backers a mug or a t-shirt, you know you can go and order. But if you fundamentally you have to complete your Kickstarter to actually provide the backers their reward, that's a hard link you really have to recognise. So postage, this is just an example. I'm not sure how well this is going to come out, but hopefully you can see it. So one of the things you have to factor in is the cost of sending rewards out. So if you're only going to send, if you're only going to allow backers in the UK, dead simple. But as soon as you start getting involved in international backers, you have to start thinking about what that's going to mean, because that postage can be quite extensive. So typically, in the example I've got here, postage to the UK was about £3.90 and £9.75, basically £10 to send it to the US. So why does that matter? Well, it matters because what Kickstarter actually does is that you have to nominate the amount of money you want to crowdfund. And contained in with that money are the Kickstarter fees and the postage fees. Now, Kickstarter fees are a pain, but they're fairly easy to factor. That they follow a logical projection in that you get one person, they pledge some money, you pay a fee on that person. So if you get two people, you pay two fees. Problem with postage is that if you get two people from the UK funding you on this basis of £3.90, we're talking what sort of best part of £7 postage, £6.80 or something like that, or whatever, £7.80. If you were in the US, talking about if there were two people in the US, it would be £10. So actually, what does that mean? Well, if it's really successful, it doesn't matter. But if you are only moderately successful, what it means is you can reach your Kickstarter total, your funding total, with a far smaller number of backers. And that can mean you actually don't have enough money to fund your Kickstarter, because a bigger proportion of it's going in postage. I've tried to highlight the example here. So we made an assumption at the start that we were going to have about 80% people from the UK funding and about 20% from the rest of the world. That worked out really on this very small example here at about £253 worth of postage. However, it went the other way around. If it did go the other way around, if you get 80% of the people funding it from the US, and only 20 from the UK, suddenly I've got to find £351 worth of funding. I've got no more backers. That's the problem. In fact, I could easily have less backers, because I could hit that magic figure, whatever I've said here, that I needed, I wanted to get £1,300 or whatever. I could get to it a lot quicker. And it is an issue to think about. You have to take a guess somewhere down the line about where your funders are going to come from. The only other way of doing that is to charge all of them the same amount of money, and then you've got to upset the ones in the UK and Europe to a certain extent, because actually postage in Europe is relatively okay. It's really the US, Australia, New Zealand, places like that, where you're paying a lot more money. So you have to think about that and how you're going to deal with it. And all you can really do, if you don't want to rule out those people actually bidding on your stuff, is to try and build in some room, try and build in some fiddle factor. So if it all goes badly, I say goes badly wrong, but actually successful, but not in the way you're expecting to, you've got some room on the postage side of things to deal with it. All these problems magnify the much bigger it is as well. There's £100 gap there with those numbers. If you add a zero onto all of those, you can see you can start getting some quite substantial numbers. So, the other way, so it's a runaway success. That's clearly going to be good news for us, isn't it? So we've kind of got the postage right. Let's assume that. But what could go wrong? And I kind of thought, well, what could go wrong? What did I need to think about when I was thinking about that? So actually, sort of go out and look at what problems and issues other people have found. And the first is really scaling up. There becomes a point where you really can't do everything yourself. You're going to have to start employing somebody. Now, when you did your initial cash projections, did you assume your time was free? Because if suddenly you've got to employ someone to do it, and you're doing it above board in the UK, so you're paying them minimum wage or the living wage, you're talking £6, £7, £8 an hour, you've suddenly got to find to pay somebody. And that's before you get into all the other entertainment you get into in terms of employing people and the like in this country. So, can you afford to scale up, or actually are your costs so near the margin that you don't actually have enough money to do that? Have you got any single source parts that the person who owns that single source part, that OEM, which equipment manufacturer, is going to know might feel that they can charge you a bit more because they're going to know it's a runaway success, because if they know you're buying from them, they can go onto Kickstarter and see how many you've sold and how many pledges you've made. And they think, what's interesting, I think I'm going to get an order for 1,000 from this guy because I know you can't buy this from anywhere else. And I know that quote I gave him was only valid for about a month, and yeah, a month and a half, so I can put my price up now, can't I? It happens. There's some examples where you can see, particularly where people are buying stuff in from the Far East, where they've really got themselves into hot water on that side of things. That then brings into, well, how are we going to get them to us? You know, getting to them hopefully won't be too much of a problem. Hopefully the person shipping them to me from wherever it's going to be will sort that out for me, hopefully. Probably safe-ish to assume that, but not going the other way. So how am I going to get the stuff to them? Yeah, going down to the post office, posting 20 envelopes, maybe 100 envelopes, or even 1,000 envelopes is not too much at the end of the world, but it starts to get difficult, particularly when you're trying to move stuff all over the world. You know, can you actually ship stuff in large quantities to somewhere weird in the world? You know, are you covering your costs? Will DHL deliver there? Or whoever you're going to use. So just think about how you're going to manage those. If you know, what is your strategy if it's really successful? Have you got enough money in your postage costs to deal with the scaling up issue? Now you'll get to the point where above a certain amount, actually your postage costs will come down because you'll be able to use bulk services. But it's still a very common piece when you look at issues people have talked about on Kickstarter and other crowdfunding, is how they manage those things. So, the last point there, you know, coming on from the supply chain, or the last 2 points, so you've got to think about your supply. Can they cope, even if they're not going to try and stuff you? Make sure you talk to them and keep them informed if things are looking good. And finally, don't forget the tax man. Remember, anything you do on Kickstarter is considered as earnings. So keep your records. Make sure if it is just a break-even Kickstarter, you can demonstrate that at the end of the Kickstarter, because you may well have to. The tax man will find out about it. Generally, if you have over 20 transactions or something like eBay or Kickstarter, there is a requirement to provide that information through to the tax office. So just be prepared to have a question asked. So, what I suggest you do? Well, think about a structured approach to risk, and I just use this little matrix, which is something, a version of one we actually use at work. So at the end of the day, write your risks down. Think about it logically. Don't try. Write them down so you don't forget them. Then you'll know what you're worried about and what you haven't worried about. Think about the risks that you know. See what other people do. See how other people address them, and then think about which risks are ones you really can't live with. What are there out there that you really, you know, that you have to do something to mitigate, and you know. Those are the ones that need to go up in the top right-hand corner, the upset ones. You need to do something about them. You need to think about what we can do then to move them down and left. So have a plan to do that, and be really prepared that there may come a point where you have to get off the train. If there are risks associated with that Kickstarter that you feel you can't accept personally or as a family or whatever, you might have to just walk away from that Kickstarter. Okay, and be prepared to do that. That's with sort of an entrepreneur or starting up businesses, actually being understanding that there may come a point where it's just the wrong thing to do, and be prepared to do that. It might be in the long run the best thing to do. I know I've talked a couple of ideas with people about Kickstarters where I thought, actually, that's not something I'm going to get involved in. There's some risks around that really I'm not prepared to get connected with. If there are problems, talk to your backers, okay? Don't just stick your head in the sand. If you look at the examples where there are problems with backers and people have got grumpy, just go back to the previous slides, you've got 3 examples down on the right hand side which haven't gone quite to plan. The drone, which has been talked about a lot in the news recently, is only just beginning to get the stuff out, but they, you know, it's not fully spec'd. Pebble Watch had a lot of problems, and even the flotilla that we see here that's being demoed here today was due to be finished in May. What I would say though is flotilla people have been really good at keeping on every week, posting an update. Yeah, they're still a few weeks away from sending the stuff out. I think they're talking about sort of early mid-October at the moment, but every Friday, really without fail, almost without fail, they put an update, so what they're doing, so you know something's happening. And that's what all the instructions say. If stuff is going wrong, don't stick your head in the sand. Talk to your backers. They know it's a project. Kickstarter says all over the place to the backers, it could take longer than they say. Where problems occur is where people just stick their head in the sand. So that would be the real bit I'd say. So think about your risks, write them down, have a plan to deal with those risks. You know, some you can just ignore. That's not the end of the world, we can afford that. Others you can't ignore. Be prepared to stop if you really can't mitigate those. Okay? So that was all I discovered when I was worrying about things. In the end, I did sell far more in the US than I was expecting to, but it was okay on the postage front. I was covered. I kind of worried a bit about that, so I had some. I was okay. I had enough difference between the low end of where I was going to pass the Kickstarter and where I actually ended up to cover that, and still have enough money to go and buy all the bits and pieces. So that was good. But it's really amazingly easy to fall into that place. So. Okay, that's my thoughts. Any questions? Yeah.
How many backers did you get?
Sorry again?
How many backers did you get?
I think I ended up with about. So I think I had something like 65, and I think 3 of those dropped out on the 2 or 3 of those dropped out on the finance in the end. Okay, so I was just over, I think 62 paying backers is probably the best way of saying it in the end. And I'd kind of worked the finances around about 50 plus. So I'd been pretty conservative in what I was trying to do, so I was okay on that side of things. Yep.
How much time did you actually devote to this?
On and off, a lot more than I thought I was going to, I think is the answer to that. So I did most of the electronics design up front, and most of that was available before I got into the Kickstarter bit itself. So putting that to one side, writing the words out takes longer than you think. It's a relatively good interface, but still relatively painful. It's quite difficult to move across formatted text. So you can prepare it all using Word or something, and that's what I did. But as soon as you move it across, the formatting goes west. So you end up having to do a lot of the end stage formatting on the website. I spent a long time poring over spreadsheets trying to decide whether I was going to make or lose money, because I was really struggling to understand how the Kickstarter fees worked, particularly with respect to VAT. And actually, I was actually talking to a couple of guys at the Alex and a couple of others at the Pi Big Birthday earlier this year that answered some of the questions, and that allowed me to be much happier to go forward on that piece. Putting the stuff together in boxes was a pain, but didn't take a lot of time. Sending it out, I integrated with I did them in batches of 20, so I didn't upset the post office too much. But it was probably what I found most painful with the words, was getting all that side of done, I think. Okay, thanks very much, thank you.
There's a bit of experience I've had. I haven't actually run a Kickstarter, but I have backed quite a few, and I'm now quite wary because there's one I backed in the States. One of the partners ran off with all the money and is leaving the other one to actually fund it, and that is $250,000. So be careful if you're working with someone you've got to work with someone you trust and have a contract with them. So that's just, if you're an individual, fine. You only have a contract with yourself, but if you work with someone else,